sacrificed that guy 24 hours ago, and you guys are already getting political. What's happened to the 48-hour post-sacrifice period? Come on, you guys, come on, stop it. You guys, we just sacrificed. The guy we just put to death 24 hours ago, and you guys are already getting shitty. Show some respect. Show some post-sacrifice respect.
It's like 24 hours since John McCain was put to death.
All right, so
McCain was put to death.
All right.
John McCain was put to death.
All right, so the official story is going to be he meant we just put him to rest. But he had a little Freudian slip where he said, we just put him to death.
Grover?
I think so.
What letter is this?
Q.
Q. This is indeed a
Hey, Froggy.
All right, welcome to the Patriot Hour for Saturday, September 8th, folks. If you're just joining us, thanks for stopping by and giving us some of your time. We got Ben here with us, as you can see, and we just wanted to bring that in with that little clip from like 2 days ago of John Kasich. How crazy, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, of course. With the nice little Freudian slip. Oh, the no-namer was put to death instead of he was laid to rest.
Yeah.
I think that's not something that it isn't. You don't slip up and say something that different from he, she, that kind of stuff. It's he was put to death.
And that's like.
He just can't contain himself. It's like he's so furious.
When you know the truth, it's going to come out quicker.
Yes.
That's one of them slip up truths. Like, you're not supposed to let anyone know, but he got put to death.
Yeah, lies really easy. You're always constantly moving and pushing it forward, but the truth is, like, if they're trying to suppress it and hold it down, it's just trying to come up out of them. Well, that's what truth does, really.
No, I agree. Let me make sure this stuff's off. All right, so we heard that there, John McCain. Not that we're gonna stick on that, no name, but what else we were gonna get into?
Well,
what did you have pulled up? I can't remember.
Oh, I was going over some rabbit holes, but I don't know if we were talking a little bit of garage talk about the unilateral, bilateral with these different countries, and what Trump is doing with
some of the different
his
tariffs
negotiations and his deals. Yeah, he's making and Serial Brain went over this. And I mean, if you can pull up the last Reddit over this over that particular one. But what it is basically covering is when we talk about the globalists, or these people who want the one world order, one world government, one monies, this is how they think, as in a globalist style type thinking. That's kind of another buzzword for new world order, globalist. It's describing the same thing. And when you start making deals with multiple countries to do things with one country, there's too many hands in the pot, if you will. Too many Indians, not enough chiefs, or too many chiefs, not enough Indians type thing. And so I know Serial Brain went over this post saying that what Trump is doing is actually retaining and solidifying, if you will, our sovereignty, because this whole North American free trade agreement, we know, was just an absolute open gate. Take all of America's money, take all the United States money, they would just let us just drift into debts, billions of dollars. And what Trump did is basically stop that, and basically now you have America solely working with Mexico, not just having to ask the European Union or some other country if we can do business with Mexico. Now we can do Mexico individually by ourselves with Mexico, and however that works out for United States and Mexico and nobody else. And that's, you'd think, as simple as that sounds, this has not been happening. The last many regimes have been leading up and been doing this, where they are wanting to take away like our farmers. Well, why? Well, we can get, corn over here a lot cheaper, and this country produces soy for a lot better. Yeah, well, we produce soy too. Yeah, well, in our mentality, the best country that makes soy is going to produce soy for all the countries. And what do you do the best? And they're kind of say, oh, we want the best of all countries working together in harmony. But what
Yeah.
happens is that's not best for each individual country. And I think that's the whole thing that people are starting to see firsthand is they think that it's all good. Let's work together. Oh, this free trade, free trade. That is such an illusion that they say that it's not free trade. It's free trade for them and costs us lots of money. So when we have a very, what is it, a unilateral agreement with America, or actually the United States and Mexico, then that means whatever they can export to across the border to the United States, we can buy, and whatever we can export to them, they can buy. And they don't have to get their electronics from China. They don't have to get their cars assembled from Canada that comes through America, that pays the tariffs that come through America. Then once it hits, because Canada pays nothing, then through the border to Mexico they pay nothing, and then all their stuff. I mean, it's just it's so backwards of how it should be. So what Trump is doing is severing these ties.
Well, so if we're to understand correctly, a unilateral contract is one that is distinguished from a bilateral, of which is an exchange for one promise for another. But a unilateral is like pay in exchange for performance, more so than just an agreement, no matter, like, you're going to import this many, or exchange basically promises for another promises, which is bilateral. So what is the difference, so our viewers understand bilateral for unilateral?
Well, okay, and if I'm understanding that, maybe you can pull this up, like one of the breakdowns of what it means, where like the bilateral, of course, there's two parties. The and a unilateral is agreement to pay in exchange for performance. So in essence, they grow some corn, we buy their corn. We make some
For what it's
cars,
worth, folks. You kind of
they
get
buy our cars. Yes, it's for the market value. So it's like if a bushel of corn goes for $100, and the tax is such on $100, then if we buy their corn, then we'll gladly pay their tax on that corn. Just as if we have a surplus of corn because our year is good there, and they've been hit with hurricanes or whatever storms, they have a bad year, they buy some of our corn. Or it's going back and forth. It's more of an equitable agreement when you're dealing with countries dealing with business.
So they're saying the two types of contracts, a unilateral contract and bilateral. The essential difference between the two is in the parties. Unilateral contracts involve only promisor, while bilateral contracts involve both a promisor and a promisee. Huh.
So maybe I was intending to say bilateral contracts versus unilateral. It's only in promise. But if you think about it, both of those would still work between the United States and Mexico, because we still buy fruit and their agricultural stuff, and only makes one person make a promise to agree. Well, let's go into this.
Go ahead and read those.
Okay, so what is a bilateral contract? When most people think of contracts, bilateral agreements come to mind. It is the most basic form of a bilateral contract, is an agreement between at least two people or groups. Most business or personal contracts fall in this category. Examples of bilateral contracts are present in everyday life. You're entering this type of agreement every time you make a purchase at your favorite store, order a meal at a restaurant, receive treatment from a doctor, or
So
even
that's a
check out
bilateral
book
contract every time you shop at your local store, folks. That is, something to
Huge.
keep in mind.
So, okay, so what is a unilateral contract? The easiest way to understand a unilateral business contract is by analyzing world unilateral. It is a simple terms. Unilateral contracts involve an action undertaken by one person or group alone. In contract law, unilateral contracts allow one person to make a promise or agreement. You might see examples of unilateral contracts every day, too. One of the most common instances is a reward contract. Pretend you lost your dog. You place an advertisement in a newspaper or online offering a $100 reward to the person who returns your missing pooch. By offering the reward, you are offering a unilateral contract. You promise to pay should anyone fulfill the obligation of returning your dog. You're the only person who has taken any action in this contract. Yep. And has no specific responsibility or obligation by finding your dog passed on this interaction. Another common example is a contract with insurance contracts. The insurance company promises it will pay an insured person a specific amount of money in case a certain event happens. If the event doesn't happen, the company will have to pay.
How are bilateral and unilateral contracts alike? Both unilateral and bilateral contracts can be breached. Consider the term breach synonymous with break. This means breach of contract can be defined as broken contract, stemming from failure to fulfill any term of the contract without a justifiable, lawful excuse. Common examples of broken unilateral contracts might include any situation in which the person promising the pay in exchange for a completed act refuses. For example, if you offer $100 for the return of your dog, but then refuse to pay because you think the person who brought the dog back stole him, you'd be likely in breach of contract because you broke your word about the payment. Bilateral contracts can also be breached. A bilateral contract can be broken if a coworker refuses to complete his or her portion of a job. When an employer does something prohibited, an employee does something prohibited by his or her job contract, or even a customer, one prevents a contractor from satisfying the obligation or finishing the project at hand. You also need to prove the same criteria. You should decide to enforce a bilateral or unilateral contract in court. In each situation, you need to establish the contract existed. 2, the contract was broken. 3, you suffered a loss. And 4, the person you're challenging was responsible. Might as well just finish this up here.
Yeah, no, it says what's the difference between bilateral and unilateral contracts at first glance. Contracts is a number of people or parties promising an action. Bilateral contracts need at least 2 people, while unilateral contracts only obligate action on one part. And I think that's what I was trying to get at. Where bilateral contracts need at least 2, you can have at least 2, or sometimes 4, or 5, or 6, or 7, or 8, but at least need 2. While unilaterally contracts are only obligated action to one part. Another difference, it might be a bit more subtle. Look at what's being offered. In unilateral contracts, one offering the deal promises to pay with a certain act or task is completed. But bilateral contracts allow for an upfront exchange. What works best? Both unilateral and bilateral contracts are enforced in court. For example, a unilateral court is enforced when someone chooses to begin fulfilling the act demanded by a promiser. A bilateral contract is enforced from the get-go. Both parties are bound to the promise. So I think in contrast, I would rather, and I think this was kind of going on, and this is a great, love the breakdown of the fact that the United States is working solely with Russia. We probably have multiple bilateral and unilateral contracts. Maybe the bilateral ones for, okay, quick, we need some your corn. We'll buy it right now. Let's do it. Boom, get in the thing. Instead of getting stuff, inputted from, how about the dairy from Mexico versus from Canada? Then maybe unilaterally say, hey, okay, let's make an agreement that, from here on out, I like this, us buying your corn, let's say, from Mexico. I like it. We're buying up front. We're paying it. We're doing this good taxes or good tariffs on either side. And then let's do a unilateral contract that says, let's keep on doing this for many years to come. So it's a combination of 2 versus us dealing with the United Nations, which is a conglomerate of nations, and you're dealing with a whole bunch of different nations, different thing, and you have one or two people saying this is what's going to happen for all these nations, their representatives. Now each nation can deal individually with the United States, and we can get literally the best deal with that each nation and what they're best at on our own terms, rather than on some group of people's terms. And I think that's what I was in a nutshell. It's kind of hard. I mean, I'm not an expert at political, what is that, foreign, deals. I mean, this is why, Trump's in the office, obviously. I mean,
Yeah.
this is what his forte is. This is why he's this, CEO, the commander in
World
chief
class
of,
businessman.
I mean, well, I mean, there's a reason why, CEOs and CFOs and COOs and CI, all these chief people in these executive positions make hundreds of thousands of dollars, because they understand this type of business. Never ran a multi-billion-dollar company, so I can't be even start to begin what it would take and the facets and deals made. And I'm not even knowing you got to learn that country's law and our law to make this work. So it's pretty crazy. But the fact that we're working with country to country is a lot better than with us and a group of countries.
Yeah, and we're just looking to get fair, deals with these countries where it's like not so much like 90% benefits them. And I get the different sizes of this and that, but still, it's got to benefit both, not just one 100%, and just be a burden actually on the other country to even work with them. Well, your burden will, help us thrive, and can't do that anymore.
Well, it's the people in Greece who are retiring and getting all this free money, and they're living high on the hog, and they don't know where it's coming from. Yet people in France are freaking out because their taxes just got jumped up to pay for the people in Greece's retirement. That's globalism. That's what's happening. The people in Greece can't go work their hind ends off and tighten up the belt and loop, if you will, and go start producing and making something. They're having to take France, because France can up their taxes very quickly from year to year and not have to do much at all, with the European Union and all these factions involved. If one country goes down, well, another country will help out. And that's the problem is these other countries, we don't live like Greece. We don't retire like off the books and get full pension at 55 and 45. I mean, there's a reason for that. Our GDP is much bigger, but they can't be sucking off of it either.
That's right. All right, folks, there you heard it. We kind of went over just a little bit of bilateral, unilateral, and some of the stuff that's just kind of going on that's being ignored, but it's actually happening. It's going on. Anyway, you want to final thoughts on this? You want to close this down and
Well, I know that we've been focusing a little bit on some other rabbit holes, but these are a couple of terms that I know you and I were doing some garage talk, and we were talking about them, that they get thrown around a lot. And even you and I, we were talking about, it's like, we don't know bilateral, unilateral. It was something that it gets thrown around so much you don't quite understand the meanings of the. Now you can understand the Trilateral Commission, and they start talking about globalism and things like that. That's talking about, again, that's another buzzword for one world order, everybody coming to one, and they use it under the guise of love and peace. We all get together, and what they fail to realize is, we need to get back to the good old days of one person, one country dealing with another country. We making a good, solid deal, what's best for both ends. And that's what Trump is doing and has been doing. And that's the one thing that I think America as a whole, North America and South America on this, the Western part of civilization on this side, he's made promises, and he's actually kept a lot of them. Now, not all of them, obviously. He's trying to get some stuff done, and some stuff there's red tape, and he's going through. He hasn't been in quite 2 years. And so these types of terms, just to be a little bit more educated when you start listening to the mainstream, for if you hear there or here, or talk to somebody who has been saying these terms, or say, oh, well, he's been doing this and so this, and say, well, do you even know what that means? Oh, hey, by the way. And so, educate somebody on these terms, because they get thrown around a lot and people don't quite know that, even every single day when you go to the grocery store, bilateral. It's a bilateral, agreement, So
I agree. It's crazy systems, folks, that we are into here, and what we're going through. Like Ben said, lots of different angles, lots of different facets, and these are just different little things that we think you need to know about at any given certain time. So we're going to break them down. It's a Saturday evening, kind of a slow business night for the news. So we are going to actually probably do another one here just to knock something out. I got some good ideas that's been popping off. We've both been having ideas. Tons of shows coming down the pike for you guys, so stick around. Again, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, ring the bell, toggle the switch, and make sure you get all the alerts. Again, don't ever take anything we say here to be 100% truth. Do your own research, do your own fact digging, watch everything you can, read everything you can, and believe none of it until you can verify it in your own right. I'm Mike. This is a Patriot Hour. God bless, Godspeed to each and every one of you. And we'll see you back here real soon at the next Patriot Hour update video. Have a good evening.